Hello and welcome back to Football by the Numbers. My kids are quelled and at bay for right now, but I am joined by my best friend, Andrew. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing fantastic. This playoff beard is a little bit annoying, but we'll make it. My other love, hockey, we're going to push that aside here. We're going to talk U.S. men's soccer, baby.
You can push that aside until tonight where we will win the hockey game. But let's talk about the opposite of hockey. The warm months, the summer, the June USMNT friendlies and Nations League coming up here. Andrew, our friendlies that we will be playing are Morocco and Uruguay coming up in the beginning of June. Their group Nations League games, our group Nations League games, will be against Grenada on June 10th and June 14th in El Salvador. How do we feel going into these games? What do we feel like on these roster? We see the big three, if you don't count Slonina, who recently declared his allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. But we see the big three, Ethan Horvath, Zach Steffen, and Matt Turner, return as our goalkeepers. Who do you think starts, considering pretty much all of them are backup?
To be honest, I feel like in especially the first friendly that Gigi is going to kind of throw us for a wrench, and he'll play probably Matt Turner. Steffen got majority of the games for the qualifiers. As you said, none of them are starters. So we kind of need to make sure our goalkeepers that are going to probably be backing up Stefan that we talk about for the World Cup, that they get minutes as well against some of these countries. The only starter that we have is a 17-year-old goalkeeper. He has yet to be capped. He's got so much potential.
We have some new names here on the sheet for defenders. Cameron Carter-Vickers finally getting a call up from Celtic, former Tottenham man. Eric Palmer-Brown from Troyes. Joe Scally finally getting a call up. The call up he deserves.
Your boy Scally!
He deserves it more than DeAndre Yedlin. Yedlin we know will start at least one game. I hope that Joe Scally can get in at one of the fullback spots because he's better than Reggie Cannon and he's better than George Bello. He deserves one of those fullback spots, and I don't care where you put him. Yedlin could fill in, I guess, at right back. He's not terrible, but he's a good depth piece to have as long as he's just that, a depth piece. And behind Dest, who should absolutely be starting, Anthony Robinson, I think Joe Scally could give him a run for his money, and depending on who we're playing, really, Joe Scally should be in there compared to who he's lining up against.
The hard part with that is that Anthony Robinson has truly solidified his role, Greg's go-to back. I'm not saying that Scally doesn't have the skill sets or even the higher ceiling and potential-wise, because as we've seen, he's playing against competition to where he potentially has a higher ceiling than what Jedi does. But I think in the moment right now, with Greg Berhalter ball and how the U.S. men's national team is playing, it's going to be hard for him to find a starting role. But again, in these friendlies, I love that we have all these new names. We're going to get to see Tillman maybe get his first cap. We're going to get to see Eric Palmer-Brown. He might get some caps. We've got Carter-Vickers getting a first call-up.
Aaron Long coming back from injury, man, and no John Brooks.
Which
let's real quick.
Is a hot topic. I believe that's a hot topic.
Let's come back to John Brooks. What do we think about Aaron Long? Is he going to bring back the form that he had last year?
Him and the Red Bulls are on fire this season. I believe they're in the top 4 in the MLS. They're playing fantastic football. Aaron Long, I believe, has 2 or 3 goals to his name already being back. It's almost like he didn't even leave the Red Bulls. He's got his starting role back. He looks fresh. He looks like his legs are moving really well. It's actually quite amazing how well he's recovered from his Achilles. Now, part of that might be the fact that even though he didn't get minutes, he was called into camp quite a few times to train with the guys, which might have helped keep his form going into the MLS and then taking over his starting role, which I see coming right back into the lineup for the 2022 World Cup.
And it's important that he gets a call back too. He does have 2 goals, which is top 1% of all defenders. He's got .03 expected assists, which is actually in the top 72% of all center backs. Defensive actions per 90 aren't really where they were pre-injury. If you remember back then, he was at about 6 tackles and interceptions, and now he's only at about 3.5, which, we could chalk that up to a couple of things. The Red Bull are in 5th, so their midfield could really be tying it down, and he's not having to do as much work. But he does bring some of the things that people would say about John Brooks, but he does them better. So, for example, John Brooks had a really poor showing this year. Tackles and interceptions weren't there. Wolfsburg were kind of poor in the league. John Brooks had 5.5 clearances, 8.5 pressures per game, 3.7 tackles and interceptions. Progressive progressive passes and progressive carries or dribbles completed were really the benefits that he brings to the table. His aerial ability at 6'3", he only had about 2.5 clearances per game, whereas Aaron Long's at about 4.1 with like 3 inches shorter than John Brooks. He's got experience in the national team. Brooks just kind of seems like, let's transition over to Brooks now. Was it the right thing to do to keep him out of the team? Or do you think he deserved to call in instead of some of these newer guys?
The way I view Brooks, John, is the fact that, do you remember a few years ago, Altidore being in the roster continuously, way beyond his prime? Yes, he brought the speed at 36 or whatever age he was, and then the size, but yet they didn't handle that right. He didn't score. The U.S. men's national team didn't qualify for the World Cup. He took over a spot that could have been filled by these guys that we see playing already. I feel like this is almost the saving grace. Brooks is not getting the same mentality from Greg as he did give to Altidore. Brooks is not making the roster. Brooks is not getting call-ups. He's not getting turned into camp. He is being shown the fact that, sometimes it's time to move on. We've got such a strong core that's young. It's almost that Brooks doesn't bring a benefit to Greg's game. Greg does not play possession football. There is nothing that Brooks brings. He doesn't win balls aerial as he used to. He doesn't defend one-on-one well at all. I mean, he's very
really
big voice, and he's a veteran player. But we've got that in Zimmerman. We've got that in Aaron Long. We even got that in Jedi now with the amount of games he's played. I mean, I don't think Jedi hasn't made a camp in almost 2 years. When does that transition into somebody that's leading the team? That's for them to discuss in the comments.
Comment below and let us know your thoughts. Should John Brooks have been called up here? Aaron Long really encompasses former success and U.S. men's national team. I won't say elite, but I'll say U.S. men's national team elite status. We do play possession ball, but we don't maintain enough possession like some of the other elite teams might. We don't do it in the way most other teams do it, where we'll pass along the front three plus the midfield and then pass it back if we're under pressure. Those back two, back three, they need to be fast. They need to be quick on their toes. They need to be able to defend. And Brooks has shown time and time and time again, both with Wolfsburg and with the U.S. men's national team, that he can't defend like that. He can't be in a system where he's constantly under pressure. Miles Robinson, please let his injury not take too long to recover from. Miles Robinson and Walker Zimmerman have shown time and time again that they can defend in the system that we play. So why would we call up John Brooks?
They can be left on an island.
Yes, exactly. They are left on an island. The last 2 men back, and we have 2 fast fullbacks who can come back and cover, especially Jedi. That's one of the perks, is I always complain about him giving up possession too much, but he does hustle back and is able to make up those runs and, kind of draw back into the defense as well as charge forward.
Let's run into this Weston McKennie. How excited are you to see him back in the roster and actually getting some game time potentially? Do we think he gets game time, or is it more like an Aaron Long that he's just coming back from injury to be around the team, knowing he's going to be on the 2022 World Cup team?
I definitely think he gets some game time. I think Greg, even in like friendly situations, even when it really doesn't matter, just goes back to his tried and true favorites. He doesn't like to integrate new things into the team. So a lot of these guys who are coming up, Mihailovic from CF Montreal, I don't think he'll get game time. Christian Roldan, I think, will come up off the bench, but I think we'll see a lot of Kellen Acosta, Tyler Adams, Weston McKennie, and Yunus Musa. Although we do have a new commitment to the U.S. men's national team from a former German player. And now there were several German coaches, including the U17's coach, the U19's coach, Bayern's head coach, the German national team's head coach, who are all very disappointed that this player declared for the U.S. men's national team. And that player is Bayern's very own, you can see I'm wearing the Bayern kit, Malik Tillman. What do you think of this player? I mean, we can do a follow-up episode on how excited we are about this guy and, talk about some players we're excited to be called up.
And this is exciting. The fact that we have a player that has gone through this system of a team like Germany choose the United States, I think that's a massive, massive win for us. I mean, the amount of knowledge that he's going to bring, the amount of skill that he's going to bring, the amount of
and flexibility,
high-level football with Bayern Munich.
Like, I don't know if you know this, but Bayern have tried him like everywhere. They've tried him at striker. He wore the number 9 shirt for one of the U15 or U19 or U21 teams. They tried him at the 10 spot. They tried him at the 8 spot. He's even been rumored to be converted to a right back because he's so attacking minded, and we don't have a natural right back at Bayern right now. So he's been rumored to be converted even to a right back. He's been rumored to play like Paul Pogba. He's got the similar frame, 6'1". He's strong, he's quick, he's agile, he's got the awareness, he's got the vision. I'm super excited about this guy. And it really says something that he's played for the U.S. men's national team. It says something that the Germans are upset that he declared for the U.S. men's national team and not Germany, even though he'd be kind of on the outer fringes of that team, at least for the next 4 to 6 years.
He definitely puts our midfield on notice. I personally haven't seen a whole lot from him, being a casual Bayern hater. I haven't seen much of him play. I'm very excited to see what he's going to bring to the table, simply for the fact that we have Weston McKennie, Tyler Adams, Musa, Gio Reyna, Christian Pulisic, and now Tillman that are willing to bring these high-level clubs together. They're bringing that into training. So all that's going to do is level them up in the national team training. It's no longer Christian and Tyler Adams and Weston McKennie versus the MLS boys. Now we're starting to see all of these Americans go over to Europe. That training now transitions to the national team camp, just simply because that's their level that they play at. We may not give that type of training yet, but it's awesome. I love seeing it. I'm so excited. I cannot wait.
Yeah, my only worry is that his development as a player is so complex and well-versed and developed that coming back, I mean, you see this a lot with Christian. Christian going over and playing at Chelsea and at Dortmund, he really thrives and you can see the impact that he makes there. All the goal involvements, etc. When he comes back to the U.S. men's national team, it's pretty simplistic. And I don't know if players just know in North America and South America that they need to hack him and beat up on him and not give him enough space, which does seem to be kind of an issue where players in the Premier League or in the Bundesliga need to be a little more strategic, might stand off of him a little bit, give him some space to dribble and make sure that they just can't get a pass in. Whereas it's a lot more aggressive in North and South America where it's just really beat up on him, really get in his face and just don't let him have the space. Try and get him injured like he often is.
Uruguay is going to be a good test of what type of creativity our players can put out on the field. I hope he kind of goes with the newer guys, the Palmers, the Carter Vickers, the Tillmans, and put them on the field with Christian and McKennie and give them some minutes and see what kind of creative football they can play. Because ultimately on the field, what matters is what our players are going to do. Greg can put a plan in to happen. Doesn't mean they can't change it on the fly.
And if this guy really actually plays like Paul Pogba, imagine him displacing Musa from the team and having like a true number 10 where Malik Tillman thrives and having basically a Paul Pogba-esque player just launch long shots, pass, dribble quickly around players, control the midfield like Musa kind of does. Like we've seen flashes of it from Musa, but imagine having Malik Tillman do it better. Still having Musa on the bench as that option.
As we see on the national team level, it comes in depth. So we're going to need players that can come in and play at the exact same level as guys coming off. So the fact that you can have a Tillman come in for a Musa or a McKennie or vice versa, a Musa come in for a Tillman, the level doesn't drop. We're finding in the national team that our levels used to go from here, sub comes in here. Now we're starting to see players on the national team where it's like this, 1-for-1. Gino for Pulisic, Weah for Aronson. The U.S. national team has never had depth like this. Not in my time.
Yeah, and especially if Joe Scally can flop on the fullbacks too. I mean, there's an incredible depth piece too that's so flexible and versatile. And again, Malik Tillman doesn't have to play the 10. He doesn't have to play in the midfield. He can probably slot in at a wing spot if we need him to. He could probably slot in at striker. He was the top scorer in the Regionalliga before the coronavirus break had to happen and they cut off the league. He had like 18 goals. So he could be the solution to our striker problem. It doesn't look like that's where Greg's initially putting him.
Let's run to that striker world. Do you see P-Folk being the starter? What do we see happening up top? We don't have Pepi in this roster. We don't have DK in this roster.
My guess is that we're going to have Jesus Ferreira. Kind of the usual suspects here. Aronson, Areola, Ferreira, J-Mo, Pulisic, Weah, Haji Wright. Eager to see what he can do, especially at 6'4". He's a big guy. If you go watch my P-Folk video, the one striker that could fix the U.S. striker problem, he could be the answer. I mean, I don't know. I'm not impressed by any of our strikers so far. People have said Ferreira and Pepi. I like P-Folk. Just give him some time, but it doesn't even look like he's getting the time of day, despite winning the winning league dude, despite scoring title, despite scoring against Man United and another team in the Champions League, despite his Champions League pedigree, despite having more 20-goal seasons than all of our strikers combined, which is 0.
So you know what I'm really hoping we get to see, and I hope we get to see it against Uruguay, is I hope we get to see Aronson, Pulisic, and Tim Weah as a front line. Christian's been playing really well underneath the top striker, so if you push Tim Weah, Aronson a little higher and you put Christian below him and be more of a withdrawn striker, that could be an option. I just think seeing those three play together could be the most realistic, high-level line that we could have out of this group. I know P. Folk deserves a chance. The versatility is beyond.
Yeah, you could have the floating 3 wingers, one player playing striker, one going wide, and then just kind of flip-flopping and always floating, not really knowing where anybody's going to be, kind of like...
That's a bit too creative for Greg, though. A little too creative there.
It is too creative, especially when we're going to run to the corner flag and just dump the ball into 5'9" Christian Pulisic or 5'7" or whatever it is, Tim Weah, when in reality we could just play through each of those players and have a 3-man triangle just pass around everybody.
Just torching it.
With how tightly Pulisic and Aronson can hold the ball and how quick Tim Weah is with his his torque and his speed just getting off the jump. Like, I don't mind if we're on the corner of the box and Tim Weah just takes his gazelle strides, 3-4 steps where he's already beaten the defender who's still standing still on the corner and just rips a cross in on the ground. I don't mind that. It's when Dest is caught on the corner flag with 2 defenders around him and a third waiting on the corner, and he has to pass back and forth to Tim Weah or somebody 8 times and then just kind of loft one in. It doesn't work. But anyway, Andrew, I'm excited for these. Any final closing thoughts? How do you think we'll fare in both the Nations League and in our friendlies?
I think we have a fair roster to be competitive at the Nations League. We saw it last year. We did really well without our A lineup. I think this is kind of a way to get guys caps, get guys situated into the national team and being set up for what's going to be coming here after August. Now, for the friendlies, I don't really expect much coming from any of them. Uruguay is going to be really competitive. I think that's going to be a really high-level game. I don't know if this roster is set up to compete with that. It kind of depends on who he rolls out. I think losing Miles Robinson, I think my confidence in how we would show at that game is a little bit lower than what it would be if we didn't have a question at all in our back line. Yeah, I don't see Greg's creative side coming out and being able to defend like that against some of our friendlies. But again, they don't matter. So I see him kind of putting his focus on the Nations League and getting guys and getting ugly wins.
Absolutely excellently put. No creativity and ugly wins. I think we will be able to defend against Uruguay because they're kind of in a shift. It's really weird, when you think of Uruguay of old, you think of Suarez, Cavani, and now it's kind of moving towards the Fede Valverde, Bentancur, those newer guys built around the old core. Maybe if we see Cavani or Suarez being called up to the national team and accepting the call up, our defense will have a hard time, but I expect most of the battle to be in the midfield, and then us, like you said, not being creative enough to create enough chances to really take advantage of our offensive talent. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. Thank you for listening. Stay tuned for more episodes of who we're excited for these lineup. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Comment down below what you think of John Brooks and who you think should have been called up. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We are Football by the Numbers.